Hello, I'm Andrew Veach, and today I'm going to be talking about advertising creative. For much of my career, I was marketing director of Diet Chef, which we took from a startup to more than $1 million a month of revenue. So many of the examples in the presentation are diet related. Let's start by going back a few thousand years to Aristotle. As well as being the founder of philosophy, Aristotle knew a lot about persuading people, and he has 3 appeals, which I think are a great thing to include in any advert. The first thing is an ethos appeal. This is all about the speaker and why you should believe me. So, for example, part of my ethos appeal I use in the introduction is that I was co-founder of a business that was the 3rd fastest growing company in the UK. One of the ethos appeals we used in our advertising was how many customers we have, which is a very common ethos appeal. Also, any awards that you've won or qualifications of the founders are great ethos appeals too. Pathos is the second appeal, which is an appeal to emotion. And again, obviously diet is a very emotional subject, so I was in tears when I saw the photo. It was a fantastic pathos appeal. Finally, we can appeal to logic with a logos appeal. And again, the example I have here costs the same as a coffee and a sandwich. But certainly if you can get these 3 appeals of ethos, respect for the person who's speaking, pathos and logos with emotion and logic, you're a long part of the way there. So next up, hierarchy of messages. So before writing any advert, the first thing I will do is write out a hierarchy of messages. So first off, there's the primary message. And in a lot of adverts, the only thing you're actually going to get across is the primary message. So that should be one clear thing you want people to take away. And you can then have some supporting secondary messages. And again, the longer the advert is, the more you can have. But still remember, the primary message is the one that people will really take away. I quite like on written adverts using a 1-second test. So I will cover the advert up with a piece of paper. I'll show it to someone who's had no involvement with the product for a count of 1 second, and then I'll cover it up. And I'll ask them what they've seen, and I would hope that in that 1 second they would see the primary message. If the advert has got a hero photo, make sure that that photo matches the primary message. Now we come to headlines, or if you're writing an email, the subject line. The purpose of the headline or the subject line is to get the right person to read on. So here are some sort of examples of headlines I've used at Diet Chef. Do you want to is an absolute classic one. And again, that will put off people who aren't potential customers, but that's fine. How to is another absolute classic. People love how-tos. And of course, anything new is always good. And an absolute classic that we see on blogs all over the place or magazines is 10 things or 12 things, which again is a great way to get people to read on. My invention, the Trinity. 3 things you'd always want to see in a consumer advert, or at least the more of them, the better. Firstly, new. And again, new is an incredibly powerful thing. People always want to know what the new thing is. Free. The higher the free count, the better. And I'll quite often count the number of frees I'm seeing in a bit of collateral. And finally, in a subtle way, is sex. And of course, some products are probably more sex-related than others. Fashion, perfume, diet. Admittedly, something like business-to-business software is probably not really a sex appeal particularly. And again, these are some lines I used at Diet Chef to bring in sex in a subtle way. subtle and tasteful. I guess another big thing you want your advert to do is get the person reading it to think, that's me. So the first thing is that the photo should look like the person you're selling to. So if you're selling to men, use pictures of men. And remember when you're doing the photos that everyone thinks they're 10 years younger than they actually are. You also have to remember everybody's different. So, I mean, the ideal thing to cover all sort of races and genders and ages is to sort of have a group of different people so that everyone can see somebody that makes them think that's me. And feel free to use inclusive lists. So, I mean, a classic would be ideal for men or women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s or beyond. That sounds incredibly clunky, but it's actually very effective for getting people to think, that's me. Okay, so let's dive into some writing techniques now within the advert. I absolutely loathe empty adjectives. And again, in the food business, one of the empty adjectives you constantly hear is delicious, which is just horrible. So let's look at some examples here. John is very amusing and witty. Here we have just a few horrible adjectives. And let's just change that. As I approached the room, I could hear everyone laughing as John was telling one of his stories. Again, no adjectives in that sentence, it's just drawing a picture. Or the chili is absolutely delicious with a lovely tomato sauce. Horrible. The chili was handmade with British beef with a sauce of Spanish tomatoes seasoned with cayenne pepper. Again, using lots of provenance, which is a great way of selling food. And then we have a Rolls-Royce quote. Rolls-Royce is extremely quiet, or the classic talking about the only thing you can hear is the sound of the clock from David Ogilvy. Quantifying is always very good. So we've got the most popular product, or 85% of people prefer this product. Immediately it sounds factual. Fastest car, this was 21 mph faster than the others. And incidentally, 21 is more believable than 20. The cheapest deal, or $59 cheaper than our competitors. So again, in any of these situations where you're saying you're better, you should always just try and quantify in the actual number how much better you are. Relating to the customer, just try and avoid talking about yourself. I mean, there's nothing more boring than being in a conversation with somebody who goes on and on and on about themselves. Interesting conversationalists will talk about you. So in the advert, really try and avoid we as much as you can and try and talk about you. Trust is obviously a very significant issue in advertising. Let's just run through a few issues on trust. I think quotes from experts is always a good thing. And again, if the expert says it's brilliant, that's okay. That's a time when you are allowed to use superlatives. Reviews are obviously incredibly important. Trustpilot is gaining a lot of market share, and we're seeing Trustpilot now not only on websites but also appearing in print adverts too. Awards are a great thing to have won, but make sure it's awards about the product. Awards, say a marketing award, is maybe not such a good thing. All that's saying is if you're good at selling, you want awards that will actually tell people how good your product is. Press quotes, of course, are great. Television adverts. Even on things like a website, it's always good to have your full postal address on display. Guarantees are obviously a very good thing, and any sort of scientific study is great to see too. I suppose another big thing is people will often see your advert, they'll think it generally sounds like a good idea, but we see so many adverts and there's always inertia. We always think to ourselves, we'll do this next week or next month. You want people to think bad things will happen if I delay. actually masters of this are QVC, who of course have their today's special value, which is only available for today. Products regularly sell out when they're on air, so you want this same sense of urgency. A countdown timer is a fantastic way of having urgency. Scarcity, the idea that something is going to run out soon. Obviously expiry dates on offers, and it's very important that expiry date has to be soon, because obviously expiry date is far into the future, you've defeated the point of it. And again, people are more, and we'll cover this later in the psychology section, but loss aversion is a very important thing. So again, people hate the idea of missing out or of the price rising, so that's something you should really think about. Now, we come on to the monster bits of this talk. Figures of speech, or A to Z. Many of these you've probably covered if you can think back to English lessons at school. When I think of these figures of speech as being sort of like salt and pepper, you can just sort of sprinkle them into your creative and they spice everything up a little bit. So let's start with a very simple one, alliteration. 5 of your favourite foods. Again, just a bunch of words starting with the same letter. Very simple, but very effective. I should say too, all of these examples coming up are from my writing at Diet Chef. So again, they're all very diet related. Aposiopesis. An aposiopesis always ends in an ellipsis, which is these ... dots. After losing weight, I had a lot of fun on my holiday. ... A little bit naughty. I think they're just quite good when you actually avoid wanting to say something. Either you're hinting at something here, or occasionally there can be legal things you're not allowed to say, or perhaps even you're just running out of space. Anaphora. I tried Atkins, I tried Nutrisystem, nothing worked. Or the slightly more famous anaphora. We shall fight them on the beaches, we shall fight them on the landing grounds, we shall fight them in the fields and the streets, we shall never surrender, from Winston Churchill, of course. But if you think back to this without the anaphora, we shall fight on the beaches, landing grounds, streets and fields, it has absolutely no power at all. It's that repetition of the first part of each list that really adds the emphasis. Epistrophe. So epistrophe is simply an anaphora the other way around. So this is us repeating the end rather than the start, which are extremely common in songs, such as Portugal the Man, Feel It Still. I'm going to avoid singing that. A diacope. So a diacope is just a word, and then another couple of words, and then the word repeated. Very, very simple. A classic one from film would be the name's Bond, James Bond, which again is very famous. Or with some more Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or by something or other. But you get the idea. To be or not to be, again, one of the classic diacopes. Brachyllogy. Only way to lose weight, eat fewer calories. So what I just done here is removed a lot of filler words, removed from articles and a conjunction. Brachyllogy can be really handy for PPC or anywhere where you're very space constrained, and also just it throws the reader off slightly what they're expecting, which means that they just maybe pay a bit more attention. Catachresis. So this example came when we were videoing some testimonials, and a woman said, it tastes good and it's nutritional. Now obviously she should have said, it tastes good and it's nutritious, but we actually just decided to leave the words that she'd actually spoken them. And again, a testimonial where people use their own words, even if they're not strictly grammatically correct, can be very powerful. Although avoid going into malapropism and sounding like George W. Bush, my opponents misunderestimated me. That's the sort of thing you don't want to move into humour. Hyperbole. I tried millions of diets. Excuse a quote, I'd be very careful in Europe using hyperbole. In America, it's a slightly different culture. I think in America, saying we're the greatest company is actually quite reasonable. But you certainly wouldn't want to say that in Europe. Metaphors, again, I'm sure we've all come across metaphors. In diet, the metaphor of the body as a machine is very common. Similes, just a sort of, in a way, a shorter version of the metaphor. I look like a hippo, or, they're very often used, similes are very often used in jokes. I don't know, if someone gives me a task, I might say, I'm all over it like a rash. That'd be a classic simile. Hyperbaton. It's a fast diet and easy. Now this is clearly a little bit odd. We've got our our adjective noun, and then another adjective. And that's certainly not what should be happening. And again, it just jars slightly and makes you read it again. And of course, the master of hyperbaton was Yoda. Patience you must have. Judge me by my size, do you? And virtually everything Yoda says is a hyperbaton. Wars not make one great. So a fantastic one for Star Wars fans. Meritum. And again, this is an absolute classic tip for advertising. My example there. So what you're doing here is you're just listing all of the parts in a whole, which is great for that smear. And in fact, the sentence I used earlier, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s or beyond, is the same as saying everyone. But by listing all the components, you make it more likely for people to think, that's me. So this is certainly a figure of speech I would use very heavily. Onomatopoeia. So again, obviously, if you're writing about food, onomatopoeia is a huge one. Chomp, chomp, crunch, crunch, glug, glug, yum, yum, burp. So in any food writing, I would use them. I'm slightly struggling to think that I would use onomatopoeia that much outside of food. I certainly wouldn't really use it selling software, I don't think. Paradox. You can lose weight while eating curry or pasta. How can this be? I think paradox is a good thing to use in advertising, but don't leave your reader hanging. Explain to them what's going on, so you certainly don't want to leave someone confused or mystified. Personification. The pizza looked at me seductively. And personification is a great thing to use. I think I would use this quite heavily in my copywriting. Polysyndeton. No cooking and shopping and weighing and measuring. So I've got conjunctions all over the place with here. I think I would tend to use it more when it's a list of negative features, because it really makes the list drag on. I think for positive features it's probably not so good, but when you're talking about negatives, this is a great technique. Is there anything easier? Rhetorical questions are great, but make sure that the reader is going to answer the rhetorical question as you want them to answer it. Prolepsis or prebuttal. And again, if you've done any selling face-to-face, you'll know that objection handling is a big part of selling. And that's where the prebuttal is really handy. So you can think of what the objections are likely to be, bring them up yourself, and then deal with them. So again, I think this is an incredibly useful technique in advertising. Paralepsis. I don't like talking about dieting, but this diet has changed my life. Paralepsis is bringing something up by saying you don't want to talk about it. And again, if you listen to old married couples, they'll quite often do this all the time. I hate to bring this up, but, or a political example recently in Britain, very sadly, there was a terrorist attack, and a politician said, I hate to bring up the subject of cuts in policing at this time. And of course, it's just bringing the subject up while pretending you don't want to bring the subject up. It's a great technique. Synecdoche. My waistline loves this diet. So this is using a part to refer to the whole. And actually, I've used some personification in there as well, haven't I? So I don't know, suits for lawyers would be a classic, or wheels for cars, or Julius Caesar, of course. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Classic synecdoche. Zeugma. We've slimmed down our customers and our prices. See what I did there? So I'm using slimmed to modify two other words, but in two different ways. The whole in one, figures of speech. To be honest, it's something you very rarely use. And to be honest, I'm probably mainly included it because I wanted to have the A to Z of figures of speech rather than the A to S, which wouldn't have the same ring. And there we go. That's the full list. One thing I will say is these, it's a slightly fuzzy subject, and if you read books or Google them, you'll find that sometimes people have slightly different views as to what these words actually mean. So this is the way I use them. Also, there's quite a lot of figures of speech that I've missed out, either because they're a bit obscure or some of them are totally unsuited to copywriting. I mean, sarcasm is an example. Sarcasm is a figure of speech. I'd be very cautious about using sarcasm in an advert, but I can't really imagine why you'd want to do that. And there we go, we're at the end. So just as a very quick summary, for writing your brilliant advert, you would start with thinking about the three appeals: ethos, pathos, logos. Hierarchy of messages, and remember the primary message is probably the only one people will actually take away. Write a good headline or a subject line to get people to read on. Remember the Trinity, new free sex. Get the reader to think that's me, or alternatively, if it's not them, they can move on, that's fine. As you write your copy, try and avoid empty adjectives. Try and instead to paint a picture or create a visual. Gain trust and then get people to act now by overcoming inertia. And finally, sprinkle in some figures of speech. Oh, there we go. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.